Beware the house on Bittern Street. That is not a sentence we can fully understand yet, but in due time we will. For now, open your ears to hear the name of a YouTube channel sent to me by someone from my Discord. They say they found the channel randomly when they saw a video from it on their homepage, but the video has since been hidden, and they can't remember anything about it other than that the person recording was named Taylor. The channel does have something though. The description says, "Listen and understand," and contains a link to a Google presentation with a single slide, containing one of the strangest videos that I've ever seen. So make sure that your ears can hear, listen, and understand. Although the title of the video isn't shown on Google Slides, if we go into Inspect Element we can find it. And according to the title, this video was recorded on November 19th, 2017, presumably by Taylor. The video starts in a strange house in the dead of night. Taylor is pacing around nervously and repeatedly looking out windows as if to check for something outside. But what? There is no footage before this, so what is he looking for, and why would it prompt him to start recording? Wait, back up. What was that? A username. Someone is outside. Taylor goes to check it out and finds someone named Silent Omega, and they have a short conversation.
Who are you?
Nobody. Follow me.
Wait, why? Why is that tree so tall? What was that noise? Can you at least tell me where...
Stop talking. He's listening.
Who?
They continue their walk until they reach a lonely building standing solemnly in the fog.
Go inside.
Why just me?
I'm not allowed.
Taylor goes in and he finds a person without a name tag, but in chat are called bartender. So this is presumably a bar. Taylor and the bartender then have a short conversation.
What's going on?
What do you mean?
How did I get here?
I don't know. Should I?
No, I guess not.
Don't go down there. Up and downstairs are off limits. Sorry.
Sorry. Do you know who the guy outside is?
Best not speak ill of the dead.
What just happened? This loud noise played and then everyone but Taylor vanished, for seemingly no reason. I tried to test if the sound was perhaps a slowed down message or even a spectrogram containing code, but it doesn't seem to be a spectrogram and it's far too short to be anything discernible. But why did the bartender say,
Best not speak ill of the dead?
He is referring to Omega here, but how can Omega be dead when we just saw him here a second ago? Well, Taylor goes outside to look for him, but he's nowhere to be found. Neither is the bartender. But with the bartender gone, Taylor decides to investigate the basement and second floor while he has the opportunity. The upper floor is completely empty, not a single block. The basement is nearly just as sparse. However, it contains a bookshelf and a chest. In the chest is a book, presumably written by the bartender himself. It says this.
They told me of the silent death. Shackled though I am, there was one thing they could not hide from me. They are afraid. I have seen the eye of sanctity. The tailor of fate has arrived.
Taylor slowly crawls out of the basement, reasonably afraid of whatever he just heard, only to find nothing. He then leaves the bar and sees a mysterious figure in the fog.
Wait,
He runs into the cave to flee from whatever is making these noises, but on the other side, the mysterious entity is nowhere to be found, and the forest Taylor finds himself in is itself very strange. Every tree is unnaturally tall, and spaced perfectly even on a completely flat plane that seems to span forever in every direction. On top of that, one tree is for some reason only a singular block tall, with nothing but leaves lying on the ground atop a single log. Taylor begins to wander this labyrinth of trees, and eventually stumbles across a pig stuck facing a single direction. This is also the only mob we've seen up until this point for whatever reason. He decides to heed the advice of this lonely pig and goes the direction that it's pointing. He arrives at a house, but nobody appears to be home.
Yo, why are you in my attic?
sorry, I don't know where I am.
Oh, just hang on, stay here. How did you even get here?
I don't know, that's the issue.
Okay, cool. Come with me then.
Did you build this place?
Nope.
What are we doing?
Alright, hold on. What just happened? Just Play disappeared like the bartender in Quiet Omega. And after that, there was a strange sound, and Taylor presumably died, based on the damage noise that we heard. The noise that played just before that appears to be breath.ogg, an unused Minecraft sound for when the player resurfaces from water. The other sounds Taylor's been hearing don't seem to have any such backstory, but I figured this one was worth pointing out. After that, Taylor appears to have woken up from his bed. So was that all a dream? Well, that is a possibility, but we never saw Taylor go to sleep due to the recording starting in the house. But it still seems like a very likely theory. So was everything he dreamt meaningless and a figment of his imagination, or is there something deeper to it? Well, we'll have to get to that later. For now, let's get back to the video. Now that he's awake, Taylor doesn't do, see, or hear anything out of the ordinary. He simply plays the game, planting some crops, digging a tunnel, and then going back inside, where he confirms our theory as soon as he goes to bed. As soon as he closes his eyes, he's back. But this time he's on a path, not in the house. And after a short walk, we see it's the gravel walkway outside of the house he was in before. However, as he approaches the house, this happens. He runs inside for cover, looking. Despite the unnerving thing looming outside of the window, Taylor turns his focus to the suspiciously placed stairs inside of the floor, and uses a chest and a crafting table that he didn't make to craft a pickaxe and investigate. He finds a basement under the house, and seals himself inside using the blocks that he mined. Inside the basement are 8 chests and nothing else. Taylor begins to inspect each one, and in the 7th is a book that reads,
Beware the house on Bittern Street.
But who wrote this book, and what's Bittern Street? There's clearly been someone here considering the chest and crafting table that weren't present in Taylor's previous visit. So who was it, and did they write this book? Well, we'll get back to that in just a moment. But right now, Taylor is getting out of the basement, and when he emerges, the entity is gone. What was it though? Well, it was a mysterious orb of light. But why? The sounds it made are very similar to the noises we've been hearing randomly so far. But there was another even weirder noise in the middle as well. This one. Speeding this up reveals that it's actually speech, and it's saying, "Where are you going?" But why is this entity asking Taylor that question? It can see through the window to know where he's going, and if it is the source of the noises we've been hearing, it's been following him around too. So how could it not know where he's going? Well, perhaps it's asking in a more philosophical sense, like, where are you going with your life? Obviously, that question isn't about your literal location, so maybe that metaphorical direction is what the orb is asking about. But even then, why would it be asking that? At the moment, that isn't clear to Taylor, so let's get back to the video and see where he's going. Seeing that the orb of light has disappeared, Taylor decides to leave the house. But unlike his previous visit here, Silent Omega doesn't show up again. He decides to go the same direction as Omega guided him last time, but on his way, he encounters some strange mobs that flee from him. Taylor attempts to follow them, but he runs away in a panic towards the bar. So while he's doing that, let's break down the noise we just heard. It's the same as before, a very slowed down voice, this time saying, "Where did you go?" But this time there is no visible source. However, it's very clearly the same entity speaking. But why the change? Where are you going to where did you go? Can this entity not just look at Taylor and see what he's doing? Well, perhaps this orb of light isn't an entity, but the way that it sees the world. If that is the case, that would explain why it seemingly doesn't know where Taylor is or where he's going to be next. But there's no way to know for sure yet. For now, let's get back to Taylor and see where he ends up. He manages to make his way back to the bar, and unlike Omega, the bartender is still there and greets him. Taylor walks up to him and asks,
Welcome.
Have you seen me here before?
Of course.
What about Omega?
Who?
Quiet Omega.
I don't know who that is, sorry.
He was just here with me before.
I've never seen you here before.
Where? You just
I
said...
should show you the basement.
Wait, what?
Quiet. They're listening. Anything else?
Do you know who Just Playin' is?
Yes, I do. He and Phil live together.
Who's Phil?
I shouldn't say. Privacy is what holds our world together after all.
After that encounter, Taylor walks to the door, but pauses. He's presumably thinking back to when he was just here before, and the mysterious figure he saw near the cave. He then lies about where he's going to go next to lure them into a false sense of security, saying,
I'm going back to my house.
He then sprints towards the cave, but there's nobody there. It seems that whoever this mystery entity is was prepared. He runs into the cave to escape the entity, and the sound of its approach begins to fade as he emerges from the cave into the forest of uniformity. Nothing here seems to have changed, not even the strangely short tree he found before. He continues his trek through the gridded trees back to the pig from before, but this time decides not to heed the advice of this directionally challenged swine. Instead, he goes the exact opposite direction that it's facing. This leads him somewhere that looks like the Farlands, which shouldn't even be possible. The Farlands only ever generated like this on beta versions of the game, which this clearly isn't. But even then, they only ever generated over 12 million blocks away from spawn, which I'm just assuming Taylor is not. Despite these oddities, Taylor braves the corrupted terrain and makes his way inside, wandering through the dreary caverns in the hopes of finding something useful. But it's clear that he isn't alone. He doesn't let the strange noise stop him though, and he still refuses to halt his expedition, and is rewarded with a very faint buzzing noise and a wall of bedrock from which the sound is emanating. He says,
What the heck?
He then says,
Hello?
The wall doesn't seem very sociable, so Taylor decides to cut his hearing losses and go back to whence he came. Despite a bit of noise, presumably from the orb, he makes it back out unscathed and begins to wander some more. Taylor ends up stumbling back into Just Playin's house, but nobody seems to be home. Keyword, seems.
What's good, twin?
Hey, where's Phil at?
You know Phil?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Follow me. He's in there.
Hi. What's wrong? Are you Phil? Where did Just Playin go? Stop doing that. Why does he do that?
Taylor leaves to go back and explore the forest further. So while he does that, let's unpack whatever the heck just happened here. Everything was going about the same as the last visit up until Taylor brought up Phil. And then it seems almost like a switch flipped in Just Playin's brain. And he just stands there staring at nothing for a bit before deciding to take Taylor to meet Phil. Perhaps it's because Taylor realistically shouldn't know who Phil even is. They've never met. But regardless of reason, after getting to know where Phil is, like the previous visit near the pig, Just Playin vanishes without a trace. And then we see Phil. The name Phil really does not suit this guy. I expected to see a normal looking dude, not a cursed spirit. He's completely motionless, has no name tag, and replies with a loud and harsh wrong every time Taylor says anything. except when Taylor asks, "Are you Phil?" So, at the very least, we know that this is Phil, but as to why his name is so casual when he appears to be some kind of corrupted entity isn't explained. But after this, Taylor wanders his way back to our favorite forward-facing pig. But breath.ogg doesn't play this time. Instead, Taylor wakes up from the dream, or more realistically, nightmare. But what just happened? Unlike before when Taylor heard breath.ogg play right before waking up, this time the sounds of the orb played very loudly, and he was teleported into what looks like a world of blood based on the color. Behind him is a massive monolithic structure, and once again we hear the voice of the orb, this time saying, "Who are you?" Afterwards, he's awoken in his home just as before. However, unlike before, he doesn't simply go about his day doing mundane activities. Instead, he frantically begins to gather dirt and cobblestone, despite already having tons of materials in his house. He takes the blocks he gathered and begins to build a shell around his house, and he spends most of the day casing his house in a layer of dirt and cobblestone. The only opening he leaves is in the front door, and after the entire shell is complete, he goes inside and seals the exit behind him. For the next 5 minutes, all he does is spam right-click on his bed until he sleeps again. Once his mind drifts into darkness, he once again finds himself in the dreamlands, but this time is on a hill above the house as opposed to in front or inside of it. He makes his way down to the house once again, but the door is open, and there are a few changes inside. A newly placed furnace with charcoal inside, and a hole in the floor. Taylor asks,
Is anyone here?
Just before making his way into the basement to search for any clues as to who may have been active inside the building. In the basement isn't nothing new, or so it seems. If you remember, last time Taylor was down here, he found a book that said, "Beware the house on Bittern Street," which we've not yet seen. However, once he read it, he placed it back in the chest in this slot, but now it's in this slot. Someone moved it. Taylor takes it out and turns to page 1.
Why have we been left alone? What freedom does salvation truly bring? If we are left in the dark, how will we know when the light arrives? Perhaps in my selfishness, I am just as wicked as the darkness I fear. Choice is a privilege of the free. All we have is fragile hope.
After reading this, Taylor exits the basement and rejoins the outside world once again. The outside world, however, doesn't seem very happy to see him. This person appears to be Silent Omega. However, his name tag is gone, and he's launching a full-scale attack on everyone's eardrums. Taylor flees from him and the noise, taking refuge in the bar and barricading the door, only to find that it's been completely vacated. The bartender and all of the stuff he had in the basement has disappeared without a trace. Before leaving, Taylor peeks out each window to keep an eye out for Silent Omega, and the coast appears to be clear, but appearances can be deceiving. Taylor once again attempts to escape Omega, this time by running into a cave near the bar. But unlike his previous visits, he decides to gamble on the second tunnel leading right. When he goes inside, for a brief moment, everything goes black. But then Taylor emerges on the other side and finds himself in a large cavern, and stumbles into a building that appears to be a church or library of some kind. Inside are 4 large bookshelves. Taylor finds a chest containing a book in quill in one of them, and it says,
The silent death is at hand. We don't know how to stop it. Perhaps it is illusionary, perhaps it is a figment of our minds. But the question remains, why? Reality does not blink on its own.
Upon looking around some more, Taylor finds yet another chest with a book inside of a different bookshelf. This one saying,
Unrest walks our lands in the shadows, peering into us. Has our time arrived?
Taylor continues to explore the building in search of more information, but then I noticed something strange. He doesn't seem to realize this, but the books that dropped when he broke this bookshelf just a moment ago are gone after he walks around this shelf, which means that he's not alone. He eventually finds one more chest high up on the third shelf from the right, and inside is yet another book that reads,
How can it be that this Taylor is known and yet unspoken? Where is he going?
After reading this, Taylor explores a bit longer, but doesn't find any additional information, and then exits the building and goes back into the cave. Upon re-entering the tunnel that he came from, it appears that Omega is gone, and Taylor returns to the gridded plain. Unlike before though, he decides not to visit the Farlands yet. Instead, he makes his way back to Just Playin's house. But contrary to his previous visits, Just Playin is already inside.
Hi.
Hi. Why are you late?
What?
You're not supposed to be late.
I didn't know you were waiting for me.
Where did you go?
Some library or something.
Okay. Come with me.
The heck?
Basement.
What do you mean basement?
Doesn't yours look the same?
No? What kind of basement is this?
Oh, right. Let's just stay on task, alright? Give this to Phil.
Hello?
After this, Taylor leaves the basement, only to find that the way he came in has been sealed back up, and says,
Are you there?
Now, I want to pause for a moment to address something about Just Playin, and that's the fact that he seems to be on some kind of script. All 3 times Taylor has talked to him, Playin asks Taylor a question, and once Taylor responds, he freezes, and then instantly starts out on a task and responds without hesitation. First it was taking Taylor to the pig, then to Phil, and this time to the basement. It's like he can see the future, but not enough to predict exactly what Taylor will do. So he says something to narrow down the possibilities, and then once Taylor replies, he acts accordingly. Either that, or someone else can see the future and instructs Playin to do specific things in response to certain things Taylor might say. I think this is a more possible theory, as Playin doesn't seem to be fully aware of what's going on. When Taylor got to the house just a moment ago, Playin said,
Why are you late? You're not supposed to be late.
That would imply that he expected Taylor to be on a schedule. If he could see the future, he would have known that Taylor wouldn't show up. So it's more likely that he's being instructed by someone else. But who? Well, we don't really know just yet, but we'll get back to that in a minute. Right now, Taylor is going to give this strange item to Phil like Playin told him to, so perhaps that will shine some light on our questions.
Hello. Why do you do that? What now?
Outliers call. Unlock the vault.
What outliers?
After this, Phil vanishes, and Taylor begins searching for these outliers tall. However, he seems to get an idea relatively quickly. Just outside Phil's location is a tree that's strangely taller than the rest, and Taylor crafts an axe to chop it down. After that, he uses the book from the basement to write down how many blocks tall the tree was, throws them away, and begins searching again. My guess is that Taylor is assuming that the outliers tall are the trees that deviate in size from the rest. And to unlock the vault, you would need a code, and codes are usually made up of numbers, and thus the height of the outliers must be the combination. Using this theory, Taylor begins wandering the forest and marks down 4 trees. A 6-block tall tree, 2 9-block tall trees, and the 1-block tall tree from before. He then says,
I don't think I saw any more.
and then makes his way to the far lands, presumably under the assumption that the vault is the bedrock wall we saw before. That would explain why it was giving a loud noise every single time he said something. The things he said weren't the code. On his way there, he hears the bellowing of this orb entity multiple times. However, that doesn't slow his advance in the slightest. He reaches the bedrock vault and begins trying random combinations of the numbers 9, 6, 1, and 9.
9616. 9691. 1961. Oh, I'm dumb. That's... $1996.
This code unlocks the vault, and a 3x3 door appears in front of Taylor when he says it, and the buzzing noise goes away. Taylor decides to craft some torches, and then enters the bedrock room, which turns out to be a maze. He is then faced with a decision: go left or go right. He chooses not to go left, because like the vault said, Taylor is in fact not dumb. He then wanders the right side of the maze for a while, placing torches in the doorways that he's already ventured into to avoid turning back on himself and getting lost. Using this method, he eventually finds a doorway that leads outside of the maze. The terrain is still completely flat, however it is now barren as well, not a single tree in sight. Instead, all Taylor can see is a gravel pathway lined by small houses on the left side. Could this be Bittern Street? Taylor begins to investigate, opening the doors of the houses and peeking inside.
Why am I here? Is he gonna check this room? I don't hear him. Why is he chasing me? Does he want something? What do I do?
Taylor finds himself in a void where only the stars are visible. But in the distance, something is obscuring the sky. He walks towards it, and it turns out to be another monolithic structure similar to the one in the World of Blood. However, this one seems to be carved with an eye. Upon seeing this, the video comes to an end. There's a lot to unpack with this video, but let's start with the channel that led us to it, Ears to Hear. This is likely a reference to Mark 4:9, where Jesus himself says, "Anyone with ears to hear should listen and understand." and as you already know, the description says just that. This divine theme is persistent throughout the entire linked video as well. However, it's not instantly apparent. The most obvious divine being, though, is the orb entity we hear throughout the video and see once in Taylor's second dream. Additionally, both Silent Omega and the bartender reference someone who is listening as a reason for Taylor to be quiet. This should indicate that this orb is some godlike being who can hear everything that happens, but that doesn't actually seem to be the case. The only 3 times we hear it speak, it's asking questions. First it says, then later, and lastly in the Blood Ocean it asks. That doesn't sound very omnipotent to me. None of these things are questions that an omnipotent entity would need to ask. It should already know, and yet it doesn't. But perhaps Taylor is special. The reason I say this is because of the books he's found throughout his journey. Multiple of them reference someone known as the Taylor of Fate, an obvious parallel between the name Taylor with a Y and the title Taylor with an I. In the library, one of the books even questions where this person is going, exactly as the orb did to Taylor in the house. But if Taylor and the Taylor of Fate are the same person, then who is he? Well, there's one other term that consistently comes up when the books talk about the Taylor of Fate. The Silent Death. One of the books in the library says that the Silent Death is at hand, which means it's either occurring or near. But what is it? All that the book says about it is that reality does not blink on its own. But other than that, it provides no additional context as to what the Silent Death actually is. The only other book to talk about it is in the bartender's basement, where the sentiment seems to be different. The book says that they told him of the Silent Death, and that he could tell they are afraid, which means that they likely wrote the book in the library given the contrast in tone. The library's book writes about it as if it's an unavoidable danger that may or may not even be real, whereas the bartender's book is written as if the Silent Death is a welcomed certainty, but still provides no actual clues as to what it is. Something interesting, however, is that the Silent Death may not be an event, but rather a person. Silent Omega. The names are very similar after all. Omega is the final letter in the Greek alphabet, and is often used to denote an ultimate end, just like death. The bartender also says something incredibly strange just before Omega vanishes outside the bar. He says,
Best not speak ill of the dead.
This obviously implies that Omega is dead, despite clearly being not dead, but then vanishes alongside an incredibly loud noise right after. This isn't the only strange thing the bartender says though. Upon his second visit, Taylor asks,
Have you seen me here before?
To which the bartender replies,
Of course.
but in this same conversation he claims to not know quite Omega, and when Taylor explains,
He was just here with me before.
the bartender replies,
I've never seen you here before.
but how can that be? And he must know Omega as well. After all, you can't know someone is dead if you don't know who they are. The bartender is similar to Just Playin in this aspect. They both seem to be fully aware of everything that has and will happen, and yet not aware of when or how. And for some reason, both of them have a tendency to suddenly vanish without a trace. Quiet Omega does this as well, but only once. And his vanishing is accompanied by a very loud noise, similar to Just Playin's vanishing in the final part of the video. But what is this noise? Like I stated before, it's not a spectrogram and it's too short to be sped up and still be long enough to hear. However, this is the same noise as is coming from Omega in the third act of the dream, and due to being a much longer sample of the noise, it's actually comprehensible when sped up. This is what it sounds like the first time we heard it. The second time, it starts a little further in. And this is the last time we hear it. It sounds like music. It's pretty clear that this is the song that's being played. It seems to be a pretty random pick. Well, it's actually not. Take a listen to the first words that Doom says in the song. Omega said something similar. When he and Taylor arrived at the bar, Omega stated that he wasn't allowed inside. But the second statement, the man with 7 scars, raises more questions. However, I think I know the answers. In Just Plain's very peculiar basement, Taylor passes, but fails to notice, a poster of a person with text on top that seems to say, "Do not enter," presumably referring to Omega in the bar. This person is clearly not wearing a helmet. However, they do have a missing eye on the right side of their face. And near the end of the video, when Omega finds Taylor in the small house, he has one eye open on the left side of his face, just like the poster. So this is what Omega presumably looks like under the helmet. But why Just Plain has this in his basement, or why Omega is banned from the bar is even relevant, I'm truly not sure. However, this person does seem to have scars. At least one on their eye and multiple others on various parts of their face. So that could be what the man with 7 scars is referring to. But that also could be a bit of a stretch. Regardless, there's one more thing all of these events and people have in common. The Eye of Sanctity. It was only ever mentioned one time by the book in the bar's basement. However, eye seem to be a recurring theme here, showing up in characters like Phil, Omega, the poster in the basement, and the monolith at the end of the video. Something I've neglected to mention until now is that the buzzing sound near the bedrock vault seems to be a spectrogram, and when visualized, it appears to be a depiction of an eye, similar to the eye that Taylor sees carved into the monolith at the end of the video. And this is presumably the Eye of Sanctity. The only other monolith we see is in the Blood Ocean when the orb asks Taylor who he is. But that monolith has a different symbol carved into it. I think these two monoliths are meant to represent two entities, the orb and Quiet Omega. We heard the orb bellow very loudly just before Taylor was teleported into the Blood Ocean to see this monolith. And Omega found Taylor at the end of the video, and then he saw the Eye of Sanctity monolith right after. So Omega and this orb are clearly the most important entities in this video. And yet, even after all of this inquisition, both of them are still completely shrouded in mystery. But answerless questions can't be the end of it. It just can't. The channel says to listen and understand. I listened, I swear, I guess I just don't know where this is going.